Thank you, Coach. Thank you, Andy. Coach, with final cuts approaching, do you see any of these guys playing the numbers game a little bit, saying, "Okay, we only have X amount of spots," or is it becoming a little bit more real to them with only eight more cuts coming through?
You know, this is going to be a really hard choice, hard choices for us, especially on defense. I think the whoever we have to let go could wind up playing on another team very easily. That's the kind of depth that we have. We're fortunate in that regard. It's going to be really painful to see some of these guys walk out the door.
And Coach, to follow up, you guys bring in a quarterback midway through camp or towards the end of camp. From a defensive perspective, do you see that as a positive, giving these guys another look so they're not seeing the same three guys every day, kind of give them another avenue of experience?
I think it's been great because of the quarterbacks we do have all bring a little something different to the table. We can run we could play in the pocket offense, drop back, traditional, or we've got an ability to even go an RPO and sprint out. So I'm excited to see what the offense brings to the table. And I know Coach Filippo has been he has an expansive menu. So we're going to keep defenses on our toes, I believe.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Coach. Coach, with a league like this, there's not much history with the players playing for their teams they're currently on now. Is your film evaluation a little bit different? Are you looking back, like you're playing Houston? It's been rumored that Jarrett Guarantano is going to be starting. Are you going back to his preseason film while also looking at CJ's film from last year as well? Or are you guys just kind of starting fresh?
No, yeah, that's a great question. We will watch it. I think he has some practice squad, not preseason tape from the Arizona Cardinals. So we'll go back and watch that for sure. That's on my list of things to do today. Actually, is go in and watch him and see what he's all about. And so, schematically, there's going to be different players out there, but the scheme is probably going to change a little bit. But Chris Wilson's still the defensive coordinator there. Eric Price is still the offensive coordinator there. Curtis is still the head coach. So it's not going to be wholesale change, like we're going in blind. And so just like they're probably going to, in their cut ups, it's going to be New Orleans Breakers tape. So it's some things are going to change. The people doing some things are going to be different, but the schemes more than likely are going to stay a lot the same.
Follow up, Coach. With the 50 players remaining, do you have a team meeting after initial cut day saying this is, might sound like coach talk, but this is the family, this is the squad going into week one, or do you let your guys kind of decompress more? Was there any sort of meeting today to solidify the 50 moving forward?
No. We'll talk about that on Monday when we're in the office again, when I'm with them again. They need those guys, they work their butts off. They needed to get away. They needed to decompress. In fact, I'm on my way right now to a park or go for a walk and get outside and clear my head too. And it's a after training camp. It's you need a day or so to decompress a little bit for sure.
Well, I appreciate you doing this right after.
Of course, Pat, no problem.
Coach, kind of to piggyback off what Tyler was talking about, not only with special teams and what you were finishing up with the more you can do, does that change essentially your player personnel file a little bit more, where you're looking at a guy, for example, Jordan Thomas, who's on Birmingham right now. Guy played outside linebacker, defensive end for the practice squad of the Carolina Panthers, also played tight end, made a lot of highlights on special teams. Is when you're evaluating your players and whatnot, is this kind of like maybe more of a master of none for some of these back end guys, to where it's like, okay, he can give us a B plus, and a C at these positions versus a guy who's an A at maybe one position, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And to me, if the guy's an A player, you got to take him. You have to just go. Those are guys who usually make plays, catch touchdowns, sack the quarterback. All those things. So you have to. When you get down, the discussions that we had last night that took so long at the end, where does this player fit on special teams? If a player's even, okay, who's giving more effort and who's a better special teams player? If you're a core 4-teamer, you're on kickoff return, punt return. That's a lot of value, and so that definitely comes into play. Yes.
And coach, to follow up on special teams a little bit more, obviously a lot of these guys, their goal is to get back to the NFL. For some star players in this league, if they're wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, they're not playing on all core 4 90% of the time. If you're wide receiver 1 for the Memphis Showboats, you're probably still going to be wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 for the Denver Broncos or whatever. Is that starting to settle in for a lot of guys now? Because I feel like over the last couple of years, this league as a whole, people weren't understanding like, hey, even though he can be a wide receiver 1 at the spring football level, this man hasn't ran down and made a tackle on a kickoff in years. If you're tracking
Sure.
where.
Yeah, I think when you watch someone on tape, like, when I was a coordinator in the NFL, I watched everybody on offense. Everyone that I wrote like 140 something reports when I was OC of the Minnesota Vikings. So I watched everybody. You can tell the physicality of a player and the willingness of a player. Let's take the receiver position, for example. Well, how physical is this guy? Does he go across the middle and catch the ball in traffic? Number one. Number two, what's he like as a blocker in the run game? Okay, does he get after it in the run game? So you can tell the physicality of really any player by just the way he plays. And it can usually give you a pretty good gauge on how they would do running down on a kickoff, kickoff coverage unit or returning a kick or whatever. You can usually tell by the physicality or lack of physicality that they play with.
Coach, one of your players from last season, Davis Cheek, retired. Do you have any comments on that? I don't know how y'all's relationship is, but obviously y'all both being in Arlington, you might talk a little bit and whatnot.
Yeah. Davis and I are pretty close. I'm always in that young man's corner in supporting him and whatever decision he makes. Obviously, he had to make a decision that he felt was best for his family. And when somebody makes a decision like that, which they feel is best for their family, in my opinion, you do nothing but support them and wish them well. So Davis and I have talked, and I just did exactly that. I wished him well and just told him I'm always here for you if you ever need someone to listen to what's going on in your life.
I appreciate that, Coach. Just stand up.
Thank you, Pat.